The morning it all began was strangely calm, almost too calm for what was about to unfold. I had just pulled up to my newly bought cabin lot, a quiet patch of land surrounded by tall pines, and a gravel road that wound like a forgotten trail. I was unloading tools from my truck when a woman marched toward me, as if she'd been rehearsing this confrontation for years. Her expression was tight, lips pursed, hands planted on her hips like she owned the very soil beneath us. "Excuse me," she snapped. "You can't park there." I glanced around. There was nothing but open space, birds, and my truck sitting peacefully on my own land. "Here, this is my property," I said, trying to keep my tone calm. She scoffed. "This entire area is part of the Willow Creek HOA. Rules apply to everyone." I shook my head. "I'm not in your HOA." The moment I said it, her eyes widened as if I had confessed to a crime. "Not in the HOA." She repeated it louder, as if hoping the trees would back her up. "Sir, everything in this neighborhood falls under our jurisdiction." I pulled out my folder, stamped, signed, notarized, sealed. "Not this parcel," I said. "This lot was never annexed into your HOA. The county confirmed it." Her jaw clenched. "We'll see about that," she muttered before storming off down the road. I didn't think much of it. People like her, self-appointed rule enforcers, usually bark louder than they bite. But 10 minutes later, as I was measuring out where I wanted the new deck, 2 sheriff cars rolled up the road, lights spinning silently like they were trying not to wake the forest. The officers stepped out and approached me. One of them had a sympathetic look, the other a carefully neutral expression. "Sir," the first one said, "we got a call that you were trespassing on HOA property." I couldn't help but laugh. I'm on my own land. I have all the paperwork inside my truck. The officers asked for the documents, and I handed them over. They walked a few steps away, reviewing everything carefully. Meanwhile, the HOA woman, her name was Karen, because of course it was, stood at the end of the driveway with her arms crossed, trying to look authoritative. When the officers returned, the sympathetic one spoke first. "Sir, everything checks out. This parcel is privately owned, not HOA governed." The look on Karen's face could have curdled milk. "What do you mean not governed?" she snapped. "He still has to follow our guidelines. This is a community." "No, ma'am," the officer said. "His land is separate. He's well within his rights to do whatever he's doing here." Karen opened her mouth as if preparing to argue, but the officer held up a hand. Calling law enforcement for civil disputes, when no crime has been committed, can be considered misuse of emergency services. Please don't make us come back here for something like this. That shut her up. The officers drove off, and Karen finally stomped away, fuming, muttering something about getting the board involved. I figured that was the end of it. It wasn't. Her board turned out to be a collection of 4 equally dramatic, equally nosy individuals who saw themselves as the guardians of some suburban empire. Over the next week, they tried everything: letters, warnings, fines addressed to me even though they had no authority over my land. One board member even tried to place a bright orange HOA violation notice on my door. I took it down, walked it right to the edge of my property, and handed it back to him. "You can't enforce rules on land you don't control," I said. He huffed, pointed his finger at me, and declared, "We'll have you annexed in. You'll be under us soon enough." That's when the fire lit inside me. "You want to play that game? Fine. Let's play." I started digging deeper into county records, land deeds, old maps, and survey documents. And that's when I found something no one in Willow Creek seemed to know. The HOA didn't own the roads. They didn't own the neighborhood park. They didn't even own the retention pond they kept threatening to fine people over. The land beneath nearly everything they claimed to govern belonged to a private investment company that had gone bankrupt 10 years earlier. The land was abandoned, never transferred, forgotten in limbo, and most importantly, available for purchase. I stared at the documents in disbelief. The very ground beneath their manicured driveways and decorative lampposts wasn't theirs. It took me about 5 days to track down the right contacts, confirm the ownership status, and negotiate a price. And when the deal closed, I sat there holding the deed with a slow grin rising on my face. The land under their HOA was now mine. Every sidewalk, every stretch of road, every parking spot, every patch of grass that wasn't directly attached to a private home. Mine. I waited exactly 1 week before saying anything. I wanted everything official, filed, recorded, untouchable. Then I posted a notice at the neighborhood entrance. Polite, professional, but unmistakably firm. Effective immediately. This land is under the ownership of a private entity, and access is contingent upon compliance with property use guidelines. Unauthorized signage, fines, or enforcement actions are strictly prohibited. The HOA board called an emergency meeting the same day. I could hear them arguing from down the street, their voices carried like a flock of angry geese. Karen came marching to my driveway once again, this time looking like she had aged 20 years. "What is this?" she demanded, holding up the notice. "That," I said calmly, "is the updated policy for the land you've been trying to control. You can't do this." "I legally can. You can't control our neighborhood." I looked her straight in the eye. "I don't control your neighborhood. I control my land. And now I also control the land your HOA uses." Her face went pale. "This is illegal. Everything I did is documented and approved by the county." She opened her mouth, closed it again, opened it once more, but no words came out. Pure shock. The next week was the quietest I had ever seen Willow Creek. No more fake violation letters. No more threats. No more surprise visits. The HOA, once loud and controlling, had become silent. They didn't even look in my direction when they drove by. But I wasn't done. A month later, I offered them a simple agreement. They could continue using the land as they always had if they dissolved the HOA entirely. No more board. No more forced fees. No more harassment of residents. And you know what? The community, freed from the tyranny, voted overwhelmingly in favor. Karen was the last holdout, but even she knew the battle was over. When the HOA officially dissolved, neighbors threw a block party like they'd been waiting years for the chance. Kids ran around. Music played. People laughed freely. Some even came to thank me. One quiet elderly man shook my hand with tears in his eyes and said, "We lived scared for years. You gave us our freedom back." Standing there, watching them celebrate, I felt something unexpected: peace. A quiet satisfaction that I hadn't just won a petty feud. I had reclaimed something for an entire neighborhood. But the greatest moment came later that evening. As the sun dipped behind the trees, Karen approached me. For the first time, she didn't look angry or proud. She looked small, tired. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said softly. "I was just trying to keep things organized." "Sometimes," I replied, "people confuse control with order." She nodded, swallowed hard, then walked away without another word. And that was it. A simple misunderstanding that turned into a war, that ended with the community finally breathing again. Funny how life works. All I wanted was to build a small cabin on a quiet piece of land. But instead, I ended up owning the ground beneath an entire neighborhood, and dismantling a tyrant HOA in the process. Sometimes you don't choose the fight. Sometimes the fight chooses you. And sometimes you win so completely that the world around you changes forever. In my case, the moment they called the cops on me, they assumed they'd scare me off. Instead, that was the moment they handed me the motivation I needed to turn their entire kingdom upside down. Because the truth is simple. When you stand your ground, you don't just protect your property. You rewrite the rules of the game. And that's exactly what I did.